In the bustling streets of Lagos, amidst the hum of construction sites and the scent of street food, Akin, a young man in his early 30s, blended in seamlessly with the workers around him. His rough hands and sweat-streaked face were a far cry from the sharp suit and designer watch he once wore, as the heir to one of the largest construction companies in Nigeria. But today, Akin wasn't the CEO, he was just another laborer, lifting bricks and mixing cement under the scorching sun. His reasons for this transformation? A simple test. He had everything a man could desire: wealth, power, and respect. But none of it brought him the happiness he yearned for. His life had been filled with fake smiles, shallow relationships, and a constant pressure to uphold his family's legacy. Every day on the construction site, Akin faced the harsh realities of his new life. The grueling work was harder than he had ever imagined, and the workers around him noticed. Though he was strong, his body wasn't used to the constant physical strain. The heavy bags of cement, the endless hours of labor, the constant sweating, it took a toll on him. His co-workers, who were accustomed to such work, didn't let him forget it. "Look at this one of the men would sneer. "Weak! You think you're some big shot, but you can't even handle a few bags like the rest of us." The mocking laughter would follow him all day long, echoing in his ears as he struggled to keep up. It was a test of his endurance, and though it hurt, Akin kept quiet. This was his choice. He had to prove something, not just to them, but to himself. One afternoon, after a long stretch of work, Akin went to a fruit vendor, hoping to buy some food. His stomach growled, desperate for a meal, but his wallet was empty. "I'll pay you after work," Akin said, trying to sound confident. "I'll be good for it." The woman, a middle-aged street vendor, looked at him with disdain. "What nonsense is this? You want me to feed you now and wait? I'm not running a charity. Get away from me, you worthless man," she snapped, her voice loud enough for others to hear. The crowd around them began to laugh, pointing fingers, as Akin stood there, humiliated. He turned away, his pride wounded but his resolve unbroken. He couldn't let these daily slights stop him. He had come here for one thing: true love, and he would endure it all for her. One day, while on a break at the construction site, Akin saw a young woman with a warm smile, hawking rice in colorful bowls. She was seated on the ground, with a woven basket by her side, calling out to passers-by. Her name was Amara, and she was everything Akin's life lacked: humble, kind-hearted, and completely unaware of his true identity. Intrigued by her simplicity, Akin decided to observe her from a distance, unsure of what had drawn him to this woman who seemed so far removed from his world. The idea of falling in love with someone so far below his social class felt impossible, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that she was someone special. Amara had no idea the man who often lingered by her stall was not just any construction worker. To her, Akin was just one of the many sweaty, tired faces she saw every day, buying a quick meal before returning to their labor. Her life was simple: selling rice was her only means of survival. She had learned to work hard, keep her head down, and never expect much from life. But she couldn't ignore Akin's kindness. He was different from the others. While the other men would grab their food and leave, Akin always took a moment to chat, asking her about her day and offering her the occasional smile. His conversations were brief, but they were the highlight of her otherwise uneventful days. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling workday, Akin stayed behind when the others left. He noticed Amara sitting alone, a slight frown on her face as she counted her money. "You look tired," he said, surprising her. Amara looked up, her dark eyes meeting his for the first time. "It's nothing, just a long day." Akin hesitated for a moment. "Would you like to take a break? I know a place where we can sit and relax, away from all this." Amara was taken aback. This wasn't typical of the men who usually stopped by her stall, but something about Akin's calm demeanor made her feel like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like the others. Akin had never known a life without luxury. Raised in one of the wealthiest families in Lagos, every need had been met before he could even voice it. His childhood was filled with private tutors, luxurious vacations, and fine dining. But behind the facade of wealth, A loneliness gnawed at him, a loneliness that seemed to only grow as he got older. From the moment he was old enough to understand, Akin had been the heir to an empire. His father, a business tycoon with hands in everything from construction to oil, made it clear that Akin was destined to inherit his fortune. But as the years went by, Akin came to realize something chilling. His life was not his own. The people around him, especially women, didn't see him as Akin, they saw his wealth. Every woman who crossed his path seemed to have an agenda. They smiled at him with those perfect, calculated grins, their eyes always fixed on the bank account and the lifestyle he could provide. He had been courted by countless women, each one more interested in the lavish trips to Paris or the newest car model than in knowing the man behind the fortune. Akin had fallen for a few of them, but time and time again, the result was the same superficiality. The relationships were nothing more than transactions, with the women pretending to care while all the while eyeing his money. And then there were the constant questions, the ones that subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, probed into his finances. Do you think your father will leave you more shares in the company? What's your plan when you take over? Those questions haunted him. His wealth, his inheritance, were all anyone seemed interested in. Akin had tried to ignore it, tried to tell himself that this was just the way of the world. But after each failed attempt at love, a bitter realization began to take root. Money was the only thing people wanted from him. He needed something real, something pure. He needed love that wasn't tainted by his wealth. He wanted someone who saw him for who he was, not for what he could offer. But that seemed impossible within his world, a world filled with high society events and gold-digging socialites. So, Akin devised a plan. He would escape the clutches of his own wealth. He would leave behind the luxury, the designer suits, and the high-end cars, and become just another face in the crowd. He would test his theory. Could he find someone who would love him not for what he had, but for who he was? And so, he stepped into the life of a construction worker. It wasn't easy, pretending to be someone he was not. The calluses on his hands, the aches in his muscles known of it, was familiar to him. Yet, it was in this world, among the people who had nothing but their work and their dignity, that he found a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in years. And then, one day, he saw her Amara. Akin never imagined he would fall for someone like Amara. She was the polar opposite of the women he had known in his past. Amara wasn't looking for a rich man to pamper her or to offer her a life of luxury. She was a rice seller, working tirelessly to make ends meet, her hands calloused from years of hard labor. She didn't care about his money, hell. She didn't even know who he really was. To Akin, that was a breath of fresh air. Here was a woman who saw him as a person, not a dollar sign. She treated him like a friend, laughed at his jokes, and shared stories of her day. For the first time in his life, Akin felt like he was truly seen not as the billionaire heir, but simply as Akin. It was then that Akin realized maybe love wasn't something he could find in the high towers of his father's company or the lavish parties he used to attend. Maybe love wasn't about money at all. Days turned into weeks, and Akin found himself looking forward to Amara's visits more than anything. He'd wake up early, eager for the sight of her hawking her rice at the edge of the construction site. Though he was surrounded by workers, the noise and dust seemed to fade when Amara appeared, as if she brought a sense of peace wherever she went. At first, their interactions had been brief exchanges. Akin would buy a small bowl of rice, offer a smile, and leave. But over time, their conversations became longer. Akin, now accustomed to wearing the uniform of a worker, jeans, a faded shirt, and boots, began to share snippets of his life. He spoke about his past as a young man who had come from nothing, never mentioning the fortune he secretly owned. He wanted to test the waters, to see if she could see past the facade he had so carefully constructed. Amara, on the other hand, never asked too many questions. She was content with the small moments, watching the workers, chatting with Akin, and offering him her warm rice, which had become a comfort for him. Despite the hardships she faced in life, she never complained. She simply kept moving forward, focusing on the present, her heart always open to the possibility of helping others. One afternoon, Akin found himself in a situation he hadn't anticipated. After a long, exhausting day of manual labor, he had forgotten to bring any money for lunch. His stomach growled in protest, and the thought of skipping a meal gnawed at him. As usual, Amara appeared at the corner of the site, her basket of rice balanced neatly on her head. Seeing her, Akin walked over, feeling the heat of embarrassment rise in his chest. "Amara," he said, trying to hide the strain in his voice, "I don't have any money today. I forgot to bring my cash. I'm sorry." "Don't worry about it, Akin. You look like you're starving," she said, handing him a small bowl of rice. "I can't let you go hungry. I know what it feels like to be without." Akin looked at her, stunned by her generosity. In that moment, he realized just how different she was from everyone he had known. She wasn't offering him rice because she expected anything in return. She did it out of sheer kindness. "I don't want to take it for free," Akin protested, feeling guilty, but Amara shook her head firmly. "Sometimes people need help. What's the point of having something if you can't share it when someone else needs it?" she said, her voice soft but resolute. "The world is already so harsh. If we don't help each other, what's the use?" Akin sat down on a nearby stone, slowly digging into the rice. The warmth of the meal was comforting, but it was Amara's words that stayed with him. She spoke like someone who had seen pain, someone who understood that life wasn't about what you had, but what you could give to others when they were at their lowest. As they continued to meet each day, Akin noticed a subtle sadness in Amara's eyes, something she tried to hide behind her constant smile. One day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Akin sat with her, watching the last workers leave the site for the day. The air was cooler now, the evening breeze brushing past them. "I never asked you, Amara," Akin began gently, "but where are you from? You've told me a little about your family, but not much else." Amara's smile faded, and for the first time, she seemed distant. She looked down at the ground, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her basket. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "I lost my family to the floods," she said softly. "Years ago, when I was still a child, my parents, my younger brother, the water came so fast. There was nothing anyone could do. It took everything from us, my house, my family, my future." Akin's heart tightened. He had heard stories of floods devastating communities, but hearing it from Amara, someone so full of life despite her suffering, hit him harder than he expected. "I'm so sorry, Amara," he whispered, his voice filled with empathy. She shook her head, her eyes brimming with quiet strength. "It's life, Akin. Sometimes you lose everything, but you can't give up. I still live in the same area where I lost them, you know? I haven't been able to leave. It's hard to move on, but I can't escape it. This place is all I have left of them. The memories, they haunt me, but I can't just sit and mourn forever. So I keep going." Akin felt a lump form in his throat. He could see the struggle in her eyes, the silent war between the past she couldn't let go of and the future she was trying to build. It was as if she was tethered to the pain, but her resolve to help others despite it all was what made her even more remarkable. "And that's why you help people," Akin said softly, finally understanding. She nodded. "Death is inevitable, Akin. None of us know when our time will come. So if I can help someone when they need it, even if just for a moment, I will. I don't want to be the one who walks away when someone else's heart is breaking. I've lost enough already. I just want to be a light for others." Akin was moved by her story, by the depth of her kindness, her resilience. He had spent so much of his life hiding behind wealth, surrounded by people who pretended to care about him. But Amara was different. She had nothing, yet she gave everything. He was overwhelmed by the stark contrast of her world and his. But one thing remained clear. The more time he spent with Amara, the more he realized that his heart was no longer just looking for someone to share his wealth with. It was searching for someone who could teach him the meaning of love and selflessness. And in Amara, he had found that person. But could he truly open up to her? Could he tell her the truth about who he was, about the life he had left behind? Or would the lie he had built come crashing down, forever altering their bond? One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the construction site, Akin found himself standing before Amara, his heart pounding in his chest. It was time to say what he had been holding inside for weeks, something he couldn't deny any longer. "Amara," he said, his voice softer than usual, "I've spent so many years living in a world of pain and lack of love. I came here, to this life, hoping to find something true, something pure. And I found it in you." Amara's eyes widened in surprise, her heart skipping a beat. She had noticed the change in him, how he seemed to understand her more than anyone else, how his smile brightened her darkest days. But hearing him speak those words stirred something deep inside her. "Akin, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm saying that I've fallen for you, Amara. I've never met anyone like you, someone who shows me the meaning of love without expecting anything in return. You've given me so much, just by being yourself. I've never wanted anything more than to be with you." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she stepped closer, her heart swelling. "Akin, I've felt the same way. You've changed my world too. I never thought someone like you, young and hardworking, would ever notice me. But here you are, and I don't want to let you go." And just like that, their love story began, as if the world had faded into the background, leaving only the two of them. Yet, despite the tenderness they shared, Akin's life wasn't easy. Each day, he faced ridicule and insults from those around him. The construction workers mocked him for his so-called fake life, calling him weak for his inability to carry out the brutal labor properly. Yet he could have easily lived a life of luxury if he wanted. The street vendors and passers-by looked down on him, their eyes filled with judgment for a man who had thrown away everything to live in the dirt. But Akin endured it all. For the first time, he realized that these daily insults didn't matter. They were a small price to pay for finding something real, something worth fighting for. True love. Amara. It was all worth it. Akin has found true love, and now it was time to go home to his life of luxury. Akin spent the next few days in the luxury of his high-rise apartment, but it felt empty. The gourmet meals, designer clothes, and state-of-the-art gadgets were meaningless without Amara. He realized that he had come to rely on her kindness, her warmth, and her genuine spirit. The life of opulence no longer held any appeal. His thoughts were consumed by her, how she made him feel seen and heard in a world full of pretenders. Yet, despite his yearning for her, there was a deep fear inside him. Would Amara accept him for who he truly was? Would she forgive him for the lies? Meanwhile, Amara was frantic. For days, she hadn't heard from Akin. He had disappeared without a trace, and every day her concern grew. She asked the workers at the site about him, but none seemed to know. One of them mockingly said, "He probably disappeared because he was weak, couldn't even carry a load like the rest of us." Another man, trying to get her attention, smirked and added, "You're still looking for that loser? Come on, let me take care of you instead." Amara's heart sank. The thought of losing Akin, just like she had lost her family, terrified her. She prayed in silence, hoping nothing had happened to him. She didn't want to face the pain of losing someone she cared about again. Then, one afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up to the construction site. Amara's heart skipped a beat. The car was elegant, a stark contrast to the simple life Akin had been leading. Workers turned to look, their mouths agape, and there, stepping out of the car, was Akin dressed in a tailored suit, his posture confident, no longer the humble worker they had mocked. The same men who had laughed at him now stood in stunned silence, and the woman who had humiliated him at the fruit stand couldn't even meet his gaze. Akin didn't address anyone. He simply nodded and walked toward Amara, his eyes locked on her. Amara's heart raced as he approached, confusion and hope flooding her chest. She stood still, unsure of what was happening. As he reached her, Akin took a deep breath, finally ready to reveal the truth that had weighed on him for so long. "Amara," he began softly, "I owe you an apology. The man you've known, the one you've helped, he's not who I truly am. I'm Akin, the heir to one of the largest construction companies in Nigeria. I chose this life to see if I could find something real, something pure, and I found that in you." Amara stared at him, her mind racing. "But why? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was afraid," Akin confessed. "Afraid you'd see me as nothing more than the money, the status, the legacy. I wanted to know if you could love me for who I am not, for what I can give." Tears welled in Amara's eyes as she looked at him. I understand. I was scared too, Akin. Scared that I'd lose you, just like I lost everyone else." Akin gently cupped her face, wiping away her tears. "You won't lose me, Amara. Not now. Not ever." With that, they kissed, sealing their promises. Akin then took her away from the harsh construction site and into a new world of possibilities. He helped build a drainage system in the area where Amara had lost her family to the floods, determined to make a lasting change. As they married, Akin finally found peace, knowing that, while he could command the world outside, at home with Amara, he was simply Akin, a man loved for who he truly was. And that was everything.